Hey folks, Danny Boylan. If you have got one or a couple notes on your saxophone that are consistently and remarkably sharp, then you might find this video useful. Before I get started, if you find my content helpful, I'd greatly appreciate your subscribing to my channel. So today I'm going to talk about tone hole crescents. Tone hole crescents are pretty much exactly what they sound like. They are a crescent-shaped, normally piece of flat cork that you install basically semi-permanently inside a specific tone hole on your saxophone. The video clips that I'll show as this video goes on about how to make one, it's showing the actual construction of the one that I've got right here in this tone hole, which if you understand the way a saxophone works, if I'm playing a G, all the notes are closed, all the tone holes are closed up until right there, and the air is going through the horn and coming out right there. If I want to lower the pitch of that note, I can't physically move the tone hole lower, so this is really what a tone hole crescent is doing. It's kind of basically lowering where the tone hole is on the saxophone artificially. So one note though, so for example on my tenor, that G is just wicked sharp, and I'm talking like 20 cents or more sharp, so sharp that you had to loosen your embouchure so much to pull it down into proper pitch. Even when every other note or most of the other notes on the horn were relatively easy to get at. Of course, you're always going to have to tighten or loosen your embouchure a little bit for specific notes. But that one was just notoriously horrible, really having to loosen my embouchure. So I wanted to bring it down. This is a horn that is sentimental to me that I'm not going to get rid of. So it was worth putting the time into doing this with it. One note though, so for example, since I was aiming at the G without the octave, when I put a crescent in there, it is going to also lower the pitch of the octave G. So if that G, for example, was super flat to begin with, this would have been a horrible idea because it would have made it even lower. That wasn't the case, so this actually has worked out really well on this horn. I actually have two crescents on this horn, and they are serving me really well. So that's the whole point of the crescent, and how it works on a horn. You can take them out afterwards. I think you use rubbing alcohol or whatnot to get rid of the contact cement, so it's not something that you're going to do and you can never get rid of it or anything like that. You can definitely take it out. It's not going to do any damage to your horn. And I'll walk you through the steps here in a little bit. Also, please note that at the beginning of the video, I've got some stuff where I've used some painter's tape as a temporary crescent. It's not shaped like a crescent, but it's basically a piece of tape over part of the tone hole to lower the pitch. That's a placeholder, just to see, you can stick one on there. You don't have to take the horn apart to get it on there. Place it on there. See if you like having something in there bringing that specific note down, and then you can take it off. That's just something you can do. It's a completely optional. I do show what I'm talking about in the video, so just know that that's optional, and we'll go from here. Thanks. So the tape is just a temporary measure. Today I'm going to work on I've played with that and how wide or thick of a piece it is to get a feel for how big of a tone hole crescent I want. That tape is about right as far as how much I want it to lower the pitch. So today I'm going to work on removing that and actually putting a permanent tone hole crescent in that tone hole. So here it is. I've removed the key, but that's basically what my little temporary quote-unquote crescent has looked like. I've found that the best way to cut out a cork tone hole crescent is to you have to get a template of sorts. So I've got these calipers or whatnot to measure the size of that tone hole, and I'm literally going to walk around my house and try to find a firm circular object like a jar that is that same width, and I can use it to cut a circle of cork. So I just walked around, and this is what I actually found last time to cut. This was for my E, but I found a prescription bottle actually that's almost exactly the same size as that tone hole. So what I'm going to use this as my template. I'll hold that down on the cork, and I will cut the circle around it to get the material for the tone hole crescent. Now I have a piece of cork. It's a bit rough on the edge. I can cut a couple of these to try to get a nice clean one. I'm just showing this for the concept, but so there's my cork circle, which is pretty much exactly the size of that tone hole. And I'm going to try to find one of these edges that's more smooth than the other, and then end up cutting the actual crescent out of it that I will glue into the tone hole. So now what I've got is I cut basically that circle in half, and I'm going to take my Dremel to it to form a true crescent shape out of it. Really what we're trying to do is mimic the circleness of the tone hole and lowering where the sound comes out. So I'm going to use this. I find that using the Dremel is easier than a razor blade. The razor blade, as you can see from the edges, is hard to make it nice and smooth. So this is a little bit easier to use. So now I have a nice crescent. I'm unhappy about these jagged edges on this side. I'm going to play with it. I might cut a new one if I need to, but this is the concept. That's a pretty decent crescent that I will glue into the tone hole. So now I've got, I put a piece of tape on the crescent, which is going to enable me to hold it at an angle that I can gently place it into the tone hole properly, because what I've got is I've got contact cement on the edge. I just put it right on. You're not going to be able to see this, but I've you can see it in there. I've dabbed contact cement with a Q-tip on the inside of the tone hole. Careful not to get it on the actual edge of the tone hole so that your pad still seals nicely. And then you wait 15 plus minutes for the two parts to dry some, and then you got one shot really to get it in place nicely. So we'll do that next. Okay, I got that guy in there. I'm actually pretty darn happy with that. It's pretty big, but what you can do, I like making things larger at the beginning because you can always take material off and you can't add it back on. So also I noticed that even though the edges on this side, on the outside, were rough, I did sand them a tiny bit ahead of time with the Dremel, but they were still a little bit rough. But once I got it in there and applied a good bit of pressure on this side, the contact cement and pushing it against the tone hole actually kind of took care of the rough edges. So it's actually seated in there really pretty nicely. So it's just below the tone hole. Would actually like to have it a tiny bit higher up than that. That should be perfectly acceptable. So that's so that the it won't mess with the pad or the seating. So we'll put it back together and play test it. And like I said, if it's lowering the pitch too much, I can come back to where I'm at right here and take some material off with the Dremel. I'd rather start wide than too thin. So we'll check it out.